Hi, I'm Philip Greenwood at Waterways Protection, and I decided to make this video. I made a Twitter space yesterday. It was our first ever Twitter space where I use the term we. A lot of the participants didn't show up actually, but it's basically an opportunity really to talk about. Just to reiterate what I went over on the Twitter space, so it's obviously not going to be exactly the same. I'm not going to be following, everything verbatim, but it's really just an opportunity as well for me at Waterways Protection to really talk about what's happening with relation to water pollution here in the UK, and in particular, at least on this video and the Twitter space I just did, sewage pollution. So it's probably going to be a half-hour video. You know better than me right now, as you can see how long the video is. I'm still a little bit unsure how long it's going to be, but I'm just basically going to, explain everything that I've learned over the last 2 years as I've been, obsessing about this issue. So grab a cup of tea if you haven't already. If you haven't, hit the pause, make a cup of tea, or leave this video to when you've got a minute. This is also what you call a laundry video. It must be said, I've not heard the term laundry video in a few years, so it might not be entirely appropriate anymore, but it basically means it's a video you can listen to, so you can just listen to the audio and you can do your laundry. You don't necessarily need to be looking at yours truly here, but of course you are more than welcome to. Now hopefully we don't get much interference from this one. Normally she likes to sit on my desk in front of here, but we're trying to avoid that because we don't want to knock in anything over, so hopefully this one doesn't disturb us too much. So maybe we'll just leave her here for a minute. Yeah? Okay, fine. So okay, no, okay, sorry. Okay, anyway, okay, so the idea really is just to, hang on, let me get this straight. Great. Let me just do a little bit more like this, I think. Okay, great. So the idea is to really focus predominantly on the technical aspects, as opposed to constantly, me constantly focus on the political aspects of this argument, of which there are many, but really we just want to look at, how this problem can, actually be solved. So let's just jump right into it. So the big issue that we have is very simply, it's two issues. It's sewage pollution, agricultural pollution are the two main ones. There's a number of other water pollution issues as well, but they're the two main ones, sewage pollution and agricultural pollution, which are basically destroying, our rivers, waterways, streams, local seas and beaches, which many of you are seeing for the first time this summer, actually experiencing it, which is good. I mean, obviously it's not good, but it's good that finally, because what's been happening is the pollution's been happening in the rivers for quite a long time now. But people sort of turn a little bit of a blind eye because they can't really see it that much. But what you have recently been seeing happening on your beaches has been happening to our rivers and waterways for quite some time. So, I mean, not only do they have pipes, discharge pipes, into surface waters, rivers, lakes, etc., they also have discharge pipes that go underground, into groundwater supplies. It's insane. It's insane that you would just spew toxic waste, which is literally what this is, make no mistake, into our groundwater supplies, which can do all kinds of, untold damage. So, let's talk, a little bit more about that. But I just want to focus on this video anyway, on the sewage problem issue. We're not going to talk too much about agricultural waste or the waste that comes from industrial estates now, or from other areas, from the streets down the drains directly into rivers without it passing through an interceptor. Interceptors are just basically things, contraptions, if you will, that basically when the water comes down from an industrial estate, for example, from the drainage into the river, an interceptor can pick that up, filter it out, and re-divert wastewater to the treatment centre, so it's not purely going into the rivers. So we're not going to talk too much about, we're not really going to talk about that today, other than what I've just said. Agricultural waste is just very simply runoff fertilizers, synthetic fertilizers, high in nitrogen, for example, nitrates, which run off from the fields into the rivers, and basically they provide too much nutrients to the river, so the rivers are effectively starved, and then you get all these weird algae blooms, and the fish, basically the fish can't breathe, and so they die, and so it's quite bad, because if we continue at the rate that we are, and right now we're not only continuing at the rate that we are, we're just increasing more and more and more. When I say we, I use the term liberally. What I actually mean is the water companies, who are being given a free pass by essentially a disinterested government that has allowed individual MPs, many of themselves morally compromised people, just to basically give the water companies a free pass, just to let them do what they want. I mean, look, I am not, this for me is not political, okay? I know there's a lot of talk about renationalisation of natural monopolies, like water and energy and things like that, and I am not against that, but that's not actually my argument. My argument is whoever is in charge of a particular water plant, a particular sewage, water treatment centre, okay, has a responsibility. So whether that's a government, whether that's a local council, or whether it's an international corporation, my concern is that whoever's running it, that the obligations are met, so that society that they're serving isn't being polluted, isn't literally being pooed on, literally. And the big problem with pollution, it's not even your number ones and your number twos and whatever else goes down there in terms of organic waste from ourselves. I mean, it's not great. There's been countless scientific studies done to prove that this is, it's not good to put your human waste into rivers and seas at the level that we're doing. That's really bad, but it's not the only problem. It's everything else as well. It's all your shampoos, all your chemicals, all your oils, all your this, all your that. That's literally been spewed into the waterways. They do not stand a chance. And let me tell you all right now, today, if we collectively, as a country, as a people who live on this land, allow the water companies or whoever's operating these water plants to do it in such an inefficient way that they're basically now just in a situation where basically now, they bring in, they'll bring in the water, they'll bring in the waste, and rather than treat it, some oik at the plant will just be like, whose boss will say, just send it out to the river, let's not bother treating it, okay, don't worry about that. All right then. Yeah, so then they're literally just sending it to the rivers and the lakes. And let me tell you something else as well. There's a lot of talk about when it overflows rain and things like this. Yeah. The waterworks become overrun, and so they have to release. Let me tell you, it might be true that storm overflow, certain waterworks might have their tanks full in a certain amount of time. So in those cases, they can redirect the storm overflow to a body of water. I'm not saying it's right, but that's what they do, okay? But they don't need to then consciously go into the waterworks and then release all the held sewage. There's no reason for that. That can stay there being constantly treated. They're just redirecting storm overflow at this point, but they choose to dump all of the waste at the same time, okay? So any argument about, they have to because they don't have capacity, okay, it's a little bit disingenuous, okay? I just want to clear that up. So anyway, but what do we need as a society? What does a water treatment plant need? Well, number one, the big issue we have is that no one's even talking about because we've been so overwhelmed with all the sewage pollution and everything else like that. Some of the finer nuanced bits don't get a look in, right? So let's just talk about that. The first issue we have before anything is that the final effluent, okay, now let me just tell you what final effluent is. When a water company treats the water, okay, they clean it, they put it through some filter beds, there's a few more processes before that, but I'm just simplifying. They'll put it through a couple of filter beds, and then the water will be effectively clear. Now, at that point, if it's going to be drinking water, for example, it will be sent on and it will be filtered a couple more times, and then there'll be some processes, i.e. they'll add chlorine, and they'll add fluoride to it to make it acceptable for drinking water. Okay, I'm not going to talk about whether that's the best thing or not today because I don't want to confuse the issue. But that's what happens. However, the water that's just been filtered a couple of times, which is what we call the final effluent, is then sent directly into open bodies of water. Now, this is the water that's already been treated, yeah? But this final effluent, okay, which is treated sewage water that's been sent out into the system, okay, even the water that is actually treated is treated to such a low level that when it's pumped out back into the local rivers or open bodies of water or seas or, wherever, it is still highly, highly toxic. It still hasn't had all the pharmaceutical products filtered out of it, and pharmaceuticals are a major issue. I mean, they are wreaking absolute havoc on our life forms and our ecosystems. Okay, so the final effluent doesn't filter out all those pharmaceutical products. It doesn't filter out all the chemicals. It doesn't filter out some bacteria, pathogens, and viruses. And for what? simply because they just won't filter the water a couple more times. I mean, the water's already there in the system. They can actually just send it to the filter beds to be filtered a couple more times, but they don't. Why don't they? Interesting. I actually asked a guy this, and the guy, his name is Stuart. Okay, Stuart. He is, or rather was, as of 1 year ago, and I'm sure he still is, the manager of a southern water plant called Bud's Farm in Portsmouth. Yeah, you may remember the viral video about a year or so ago. Chris Purcell, is a drone operator who got the pictures. It was the aerial shots of the sea pipe spewing waste into Portsmouth. And then just underneath Portsmouth, you've got is it the Isle of Man, the Isle of Wight? I can't remember which one it is, but you know. And then obviously right next to there as well, you've got like a wildlife sanctuary. There were seals there. A couple of the seals actually washed up dead a couple of years ago because of sewage pollution outflow. But anyway, my point is it's a final effluent standard, okay, that the companies are spewing out, which is what we're all campaigning for them to do, what they're not even doing. But even if they do that, that is still not good enough. Okay, so the first point is final effluent standard needs to be raised. Now, why aren't they doing that? I asked a question to this Stuart, manager at Bud's Farm at Southern Water, and he said to me, because well, we don't have to. And I said, well, what do you mean you don't have to? And he said, well, we only treat the final effluent standard to the standards that the government have told us, that the Environment Agency give us. And I said, right, okay. And I said, and that's the standards they give you? And he's like, yeah. And I said, well, why wouldn't you treat it more? So it's basically a lot cleaner, and it's not releasing all of these, pharmaceutical waste and chemical waste, and viruses and pathogens and whatnot into the environment. And he said, well, we don't have to. And so I said, well, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? And he just sort of, and he goes, well, why would you? And so then he switched the question on me, and he said, well, why would you? And I said, well, maybe you might think you, as in your company, have a responsibility to the people that you serve and the environment around you to be treating final effluent standard to a high quality, so you're only putting clean water out there, so you're respecting the environment and the people and all the living organisms and the whole ecosystem around you. Maybe that could be the reason. Now, his response was this. That silence. He didn't have a response. There was nothing he could say. I mean, what could he say at that point? And he didn't, So maybe, I don't know if I got through to him or what. It doesn't matter even if I did or I didn't. I mean, these people are pretty, not entirely powerless, but they don't really, they work to how their bosses instruct them to. So the first problem we have, and I just want to impress this on everybody, okay, before we get into all of the other overflow issues and all the other things, the first problem we have is the water that they do treat, okay, the final effluent is still highly toxic, and nobody's talking about that. So I want you all to think about that, okay, because when this problem, or if this problem gets solved, that is still the flipping problem, and that is still affecting things in a major way. So number one, final effluent standard needs to be raised, okay? We all clear on that? Good. So what else? Now, the big problem, obviously, storm overflow. So obviously, this is when I mentioned before, lots of water comes into the system. and basically they only have so much storage. So if we take the example of Bud's Farm, yeah, Southern Water Portsmouth, which we'll just refer to as Bud's Farm from now on because that's what it's called, but it's the Southern Water Plant. They have 4 tanks, 4, not 3, 4 tanks. And these 4 tanks, each tank holds 10 minutes worth of overflow. So if there's a storm one day, or even not even a storm, just rain, just heavy rain or whatever, all the water comes in, and then it fills these tanks. But these tanks will fill in in 40 minutes. So then after 40 minutes, any of the extra water coming into the system is just obviously redirected back into the C pipe that they've got there. And by the way, just as a side point, that C pipe that they've got there, yeah, they're linking up that water plant in Bud's Farm, yeah, to other waterworks, yeah, and they're calling the Bud's Farm, right, a recycling centre, but it's all BS because all they're doing is linking it up with the other water centres so they can all get on board and use this side C pipe. That's a side point. Not wanting to confuse the issue, but that's what's happening. But they're doing it under a greenwash. Oh, this is going to be a recycling centre, okay? It's absolute BS, okay? Yes, they might do some more recycling and everything, but the real reason is so they've all got easier access to the flipping C pipe, yeah? That's all it is. It's grotesque. Anyway, so we've got tanks, right? But these tanks are only going to store 40 minutes worth of waste. 40 minutes is not good enough. Sometimes you have storms for 2 or 3 hours, 4 hours, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. It happens. That's we all know what it is, the weather in this country, okay? None of us need a lesson on it, right? Okay, the rain falls from the sky. Yes, we know it. And in England, quite a lot. Even though this year we had a bit of a drought, still in summer, we still had rainfall at 144% of what it normally is. So, we had plenty of rainfall in the winter. Sorry, not the summer, in the winter to adequately see us through for the summer. But because of gross ineptitude and, and incompetence and corruption and all the rest of it, a lot of those a lot of the reservoirs were sold. I don't want to get off topic, but the last few years, over the last 10 years, you'll notice that a lot of the reservoirs for a lot of the water companies, these are reservoirs that store clean water, okay, have been sold. Who they've been sold to? Land developers. And what are they going to do? Well, they're going to build things, aren't they? They're going to build commercial properties, residential properties, whatever they're going to build, and it was just a quick cash for them, for the water companies, I mean, to sell a water reservoir is anyway, let's continue. Let's power on. So what we need, because of these tanks, say at Bud's Farm, this foot isn't good enough. We got 2 options. We can either have a load more tanks, which is perfectly feasible, and get a few farmers' field. They don't actually have to be on that water. They don't have to actually be in that waterworks. That waterworks down at Bud's Farm probably wouldn't have capacity for any more tanks. But water flows, right? So you could literally have another. You could literally have a few miles away, whatever, another location. We buy some brownfield sites, some farmer sites, and just have a few more tanks on there. Have enough tanks on there to store sort of 2 or 3 day storm overflow. Or you could do it another way, and a more simpler way, I dare say, and a much more cheaper way, is you could build a huge sump. So a sump's like a clean water reservoir, except it's not for clean water, it's for dirty water. Because what happens is when all the water's coming into the plant, they can only treat, like 1,000 litres a second, 1,500 litres a second, whatever the capacity of that plant is. So the dirty water needs to be stored somewhere, okay, and then fed in to the into the treatment centre at a rate that they can manage. Now, because they don't have the storage, obviously they've only got 40 minutes of storage, they're just sending it all along with the sewage, which they consciously choose to do, which they don't really need to do, by the way, but they're sending it all directly into the open bodies of water. So the solution's simple, isn't it? We need to store the dirty water, so then it can be stored and then fed into the water treatment plants at a rate that they can manage. Okay, sorry to be repetitive sometimes and go over points a couple of times, but I mean I'm not the best one at explaining things sometimes, and it is new. I mean, I've had a couple of years to learn this, so I'm just trying to just make the point. So, everyone has a fair chance of understanding. People who maybe don't obsess about this as much as me, or maybe people who are totally new to this thing. Okay, so just sort of bear with me. So what we need to do is we need to store the water. So we can do that with tanks, like I said, or we can build sumps. So basically, dig a hole in the ground, obviously a very big hole in the ground, like an artificial lake or something. Have a protective layer at the bottom, so it'll probably be like a layer of concrete and then some other membrane layer, so we can literally just hold all the wastewater and then just feed it back into the system. Now, if you do this, what it means is if there is a more than overflow than 40 minutes, if it's raining for more than 40 minutes, which it often does, sometimes it can rain for 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, it's no problem. The sumps will hold the water, and they'll be at a rate that the treatment plant it can be treated, and the result is it's not sent to the environment. It's that simple. It is that simple. So just to reiterate: 1, we need final effluent standard raised. 2, we need sumps or tanks or both, sufficient amount, sufficiently big enough to store many days worth of overflow, at least 2 or 3 days worth of overflow. So there's no excuse for the local waterworks sewer man to be dumping them into our local rivers, waterways and seas. Really not complicated. Okay, sorry to talk in a slow way like that, probably not the best thing, but it just infuriates me to see what's happening. Okay, so bear with me. 3, we touched on this before, we need reservoirs to store clean water. Okay, so as I mentioned before, a lot of the water companies, they have sold the reservoirs. Just Google it. Okay, just Google it. They've sold a lot of them for short-term cash, just so they can show a better return for that year. So myopic, so unbelievable. So we need a minimum quota on reservoirs, and we need to buy the reservoirs back. We need to get them built. We need to get them functioning again. We need to do what we need to do to bring all of our reservoirs back, so we're never screwed over again like we was this summer. We were screwed over, okay, this summer. Plants, fields, hosepipe bans, this kind of thing, which meant people can't take care of things. The environment suffers. Why? Because we don't have enough water. Why? Because of the morons in the water companies and the government, okay, because they're ubiquitous. They're the same crowd. They're the same public school crowd, okay? All the same people, all the same schools, all the same universities, taking care of each other, doing whatever they can, approving each other, signing off on each other's filth. Okay, that's what's happening. So yeah, we need the reservoirs back, and we can never ever as a society leave it to chance, to some commercial interest, okay, to decide to decide what they do with our water reservoirs. Are you kidding me? So that needs to change right now, okay? So water reservoirs. So final effluent needs to be raised, yeah, to at least drinking water quality, okay? And that doesn't mean with the fluoride and chlorine in it, but raised to final effluent standard is in all the chemicals are taken out, all the pharmaceutical products are taken out, all the pathogens and the virus. So it's flipping clean water that we're putting out into the system. 1, final effluent needs to be standard. 2, SUMPs and or storage tanks to store sufficient amount of overflow, at least 3 days. Okay. 3, the reservoirs. We need all the reservoirs back, okay, so we can store clean water. So in the winter, when it's raining and maybe snowing and all the rest of it, we can fill all the reservoirs so we can use them in the drier months in the summer, okay. This is elementary, okay, but apparently this is the most complicated thing in the world, apparently. Now on to number 4, maintenance. The water pipes, they're not being maintained. I don't know what to tell you guys. They're not being maintained. They've just stopped maintaining them. Normally if you've got a pipe network, you have engineers, you have they have a rotor, they're checking the network. Or this month we're checking these pipes. Oh, there's a problem here, fix here. Oh, going along, and just normal maintenance on a pipe. Just like with gas, right? With gas, obviously they maintain pipe network because you can't get it wrong with gas, right? Because obviously if a gas pipe is not, if there's some sort of issue with it, there's going to be a gas leak, and it's potentially going to, well, not potentially, I mean, it's obviously massive problems. So we need to maintain our sewage pipes, sewage tunnels and sewage network with the same vigor as we do our gas pipes. Now the only reason, and I'm no expert on gas pipes, so if somebody's going to say, oh, the gas pipes are rubbish, okay, I don't know about that, okay, but I'm just using my powers of deduction, okay. So yeah, so they're not maintaining the pipe network. There's leaks going on, surface leaks, underground. Oh, there's a lot of underground leaks apparently. It's just that they just don't bother to attend to. There's dirty water being mixed with clean water, okay. In some instances, yeah, we're losing more water through leaks than the population that particular water plant is serving is using. Think about that. They're losing more water than they're actually providing to the population that they serve, because they just couldn't give 2 rats about maintaining their system. And if you want to know why that is, because it sounds peculiar, doesn't it? I mean, it sounds peculiar to me. It should sound peculiar to you, and I'm sure there'll be people watching this video, potentially, I might only get one of you, but there'll be, all right, maybe 10, but I'm sure perhaps there'll be somebody watching this, maybe they'll be thinking, well, nah, that ain't right. Of course they're maintaining them. Of course they would. Well, no, they're not. And why are they not maintaining them? Well, I'll tell you why in a minute. But let's just reiterate, yeah, what a water system, what your local waterworks needs to be doing right. Final effluent standard, yeah. So the filtration level is so high, we're only putting out clean water back into the environment, yeah. So we're not polluting, right? Got it? Great. 2, sumps and tanks, or tanks. Maybe you don't need the tanks. Maybe you can just go with the sumps, but to store at least 3 days worth of overflow. Okay, so there's no excuse for just putting filthy water into the system. 3, the reservoirs. We've sold all the reservoirs. Well, sorry, not all. A lot of them. We need all the reservoirs back and a lot more. So in the wetter months, the winters and spring and autumn or whatever, and even in summer, we can just store all the water. So we've always got plenty of clean water on tap. There's no panic. And then number 4, we need the correctly maintained. We need the system, the water pipes maintained. We need proper teams. We need them maintained. I mean, I don't know. We need proper teams of engineers who actually give a toss about their job, with managers above them that give a toss, with departments that have big enough budgets to employ enough people to actually do the jobs and give them the tools and the funding they need. Because I'm sure a lot of the lads there are fine lads, but at the end of the day, they just do as they're told. Working men doing as they're told. That's it, So there's nothing more to be said on it. So those 4 things. Now, some of you might think, well, why? Why aren't the water pipe networks being maintained? Well, look, it's very simple. Yeah. If you study a lot of the financial reports of the water companies, as I do, I was a financial advisor for 10 years, 10, 12 years. I worked in Tokyo, I worked in Russia, I worked in Brazil, a few different places. So I can read a financial report basically. But it's part of the business model of these water companies to run down the asset. There's a term for it. It's called sweating the assets. Okay, and the more the system. Now, this is a really interesting thing, and you guys need to know this. The more broken it becomes, the more pollution they're making, the more unmaintained the piping networks are, the better it is for the water company. Why? Why is it so? Because the more dilapidated the system is, it then gives them an increasingly stronger case to go to the government for more funding. So it's part of their business model to run down the system so they can then get more money off the government. And they'll get the money off the government to deliver a less than basic service to us. Money that they should be spending from their own profits anyway, but they're not. So what we're doing is we're having to subsidise a substandard basic maintenance which isn't good enough, just to give the water companies, or rather the owners of the water companies, even further profits. Excess profits. Yeah, that is the state of the situation. You couldn't make this is dystopian, what we're dealing with. Now then, let me have a look at my other points. So hopefully, we're clear on the points. Now, I want to talk about something else now. Information war. So obviously, a lot of these water companies are owned by international predatory financial groups that represent often a lot of anonymous investors and things like that, who see the water companies as nothing more than a a dividend paying cash machine. So let's just say you're uber rich, and I'm going to give very rough examples here. Okay, so these are not the actual figures, but this is just a crude example to make a point. Okay, if you want real examples, you can message me, I can upload them, I can send them, but this is just a crude example. But trust me, this is how it is. So let's just say you're Mr. Rich guy, criminal bent type of person, hedge fund, whatever, conglomerate, generally a group of different ones, and they decide, oh look, a water company's up for sale. Let's say Yorkshire Water, just for example, yeah. So then they buy Yorkshire Water. Let's say they buy Yorkshire Water for something like £1 billion. Okay, great. But they know that when they buy Yorkshire Water for £1 billion, they know that water companies getting over, let's say they're getting 250 million each and every year in revenue from bill payers. That's me, that's you. And then that they know that they think, oh well, look, the bare minimum is we can on the bare minimum we can run this entire operation at 50 million a year. Yeah, we could spend 100 million a year and really take it, but no, the bare minimum is 50 million. Actually, it's probably less than that. But like I say, crude examples. So then what they'll do is they'll spend the absolute bare minimum, the 50 million a year of that 250 million revenue. Did I say 200? Let's just say 250. That's coming in a year. So they'll spend the 50. So then that's 200 million pure profit. Now that 200 million pure profit each and every year, okay, or 50 million a quarter, whatever, however they do it. Okay, that doesn't go back into the water companies and sits in their bank account. That gets sent, okay, offshore. All right, that gets sent internationally. That money's out the system. Okay, it's not going to recirculate in the economy. It's not going to trickle down. That's it. That's gone. So all of these investors and the people that own these water companies, all they care about is short-term profits, So they're not interested in cutting into their dividend, right? Just to provide us with a service that they really should. No, and the more broken the system is, they know that the more chance they've got of getting the extra money from the government to take care of their problem. So it makes perfect financial sense for these people. Yeah, a lot of you don't know this, but you really need to. So I really hope that I can be a conduit in sharing this with you, and that you can fact check and learn these things yourself, okay, as you should do when you hear anything from anybody. But learn it, verify it, do whatever you need to, ask questions to me or to anyone else, and then share the knowledge with other people. So that's a big problem we've got. But anyway, look, that's financial modelling. Yeah, that's just a quick speech on the financial modelling of the of the water companies, particularly here in England. Now, information war. This is what I wanted to get to. There's an information war happening. So these water companies and their owners, okay, so obviously they can spend money on, advertising agencies and PR people and project managers and, management consultants and, basically snake oil salesmen, basically smooth talking, slick talking lawyer, PR type people. Of course, I'm generalizing. Please give me a little bit of license, yeah? And anyway, so what they're doing is they're trying to, one of the big things that they're doing, because obviously there's been a lot in the news, okay, about, it's, everything that's happening is really bad. So they want to counter the information, yeah? So we're obviously in an information war. So one of the tactics of this information war is to invert environmental logic against people. So let me give you an example of this, okay? A real example of this. So when I was at Southern Water, Bud's Farm, and I said, and we, not just me, there was several others, okay, who said, well, look, why not build extra storage? You know, build the sump, build the tank. Do you know what they said? They said, well, that uses concrete, and if you use concrete, that's not environmentally friendly. So why would we damage the environment like that? And I'm like, well, sure, there's a fractional cost to the environment and anything, but the overall benefit would be huge. No. You're an environmental terrorist. Okay, they didn't actually tell me that there. Someone else did another time, but what they actually said was that's not caring about the environment. That's dangerous. We don't want to look at that. We don't want to do any more damage to the environment. So they're basically, as a way to negate their own responsibilities, they're saying, no, we can't build anything or do anything more because that will use carbon, that will use emissions, which is bad for the environment. Yeah. It's absolute insanity, okay? But that's what they're doing, is they're trying to invert environmental logic, turn it against the campaigner, the activist, the person that's questioning them. And the other person doesn't even have to agree with it, but sometimes they can just be fatigued enough just to be like, oh, okay, maybe I'll just forget about it. So your average Daily Fail reader, okay, your average Sun reader, your average Express reader, you know, this kind of thing. And I'm sorry if I sound a bit pejorative, but there we go. You know, the average Joe off the street, you know, he's going to read this and think, oh yeah, no, okay, so what do we do? All right, well, there's nothing that can be done, okay? So it's designed to basically just create something called cognitive impasse, a bit of cognitive dissonance, a bit of a patchy area that people just don't really know what to do with, so they just forget about it. Great, which is the entire aim and the entire objective, right? So that's one thing they do. Another thing they do is they like to blame. They like to blame other people. So, you know, example would be when, again, and I've got more examples, and obviously this Buds Farm one, but I just want to focus it on one water treatment centre as and where I can and give you real world examples. But these are representative of what's happening across the entire industry. Okay, so it's not specific to this, but at least it's a real world working example, right? Blaming people. So what they were doing as well is that they started saying, well, look, people put wet wipes and sanitary products and you know, and other things down the toilet that they shouldn't. So it's not our fault. If people stop doing that, then yes, baby. Yes. So if people stop, so it's the people's fault. If people stop doing that, that would make our job easier. So they start wanting to blame other people, don't they, darling? Yes, they do. They want to blame everybody. So I remember there was this guy, he was giving this speech and he was blaming everybody, you know, for wet wipes and all the rest of it. And I was with a few other activists, and obviously I won't mention the name of the activist and stuff, but I was working with one lady, lovely lady, wild swimmer. And she was buying it. She was like, oh, well, I suppose, yeah, no, we shouldn't. And then she was sort of like walking away with sort of this malaise, this sort of thinking that, oh, yeah, no, maybe it is our problem. Oh, yeah, maybe, you know, maybe there's not a lot, maybe there's not a lot that can be done. All right, this one needs to go out. She wants some food. Oh, just eat that. All right. Cats first, always. Anyway, the wild swimmer. So she was walking away, and you know, she was just walking away with a thing in her mind that, oh yeah, you know, maybe, you know. And I just explained to her, I'm like, no, don't buy it. I said it's up to the, and I'll tell you guys the same thing as I told her. I said it's up to the water company, because in a society, when you've got a society of 500,000 people or whatever the catchment area is for that particular, you know, plant, water works plant, all sorts are going to make it down there, you know. And I'm not look, and I'm not saying that we should put wet wipes down the toilet, yeah, or even that we should use wet wipes or other products. Okay, I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm not advocating for that. But what I am saying is it's reasonable to expect that in a society, lots of other things are going to make its way into the water system, and they need to be dealt with, and that's all there is to it. You know, they have to be dealt with, and to be fair, they often are dealt with when they're just not being just sent directly without any treatment into the system. But the very fact that they would sort of make this argument, it just sort of shows the level of sort of like desperation they're at. I mean, they literally anything to keep polluting and to justify they keep polluting. They will say anything, including, you know, all the sewage outflow monitors being broken, including making illegal discharge. But they are obsessed with basically just trying to destroy our ecology. Sometimes it makes me think there's more to it than meets the eye. But let's focus on the meta. I'm not going to put on my tinfoil hat today, okay? Let's just focus on fact or empirical knowledge that we do know, okay? So yeah, inverting environmental logic against the environmentalists, for example, using the carbon and the emissions argument that it's wrong to build anything because that creates emissions or carbon or whatever. Blaming other people for putting stuff down the toilet, like, you know, wet wipes, cooking oils, or, you know, whatever else. Look, you know, it's rubbish. And also fatbergs. Yes, fatbergs happen. But, you know, it's just the way it is. It's just part of maintenance. You know, you go down there, they clean the fatbergs out, and, you know, and that's all there is to it. Yes, it's a nuisance, but that is just part of maintenance. I don't know what to tell you. If it's too much for your southern water, okay, if you can't do it, get out. You're not welcome. Yeah, if you can't do the basic things that every other country in the world doesn't have a problem with, okay, then you got no place here. Okay, no place. Now, another issue, and we're sort of coming towards the end of the video now. But I want to talk about bent charities. And when I say bent, I mean bent as in the interpretation of the word in the dictionary as in morally corrupt. Okay? That's what I mean. But we'll just say compromised charities. Okay? Just so it sounds nicer. All right? Compromised charities. So, there's a lot of charities out there that have been around a while, some new, some with a long track record, who may have been founded once upon a time, with all the best wills and intentions, and maybe they still do a lot of good work, but they have been compromised. So, some of them are heavily funded by the water companies, which is basically the boards of trustees of these charities and the workers of these charities' income, their salary, and in some cases it seems that their campaigning, okay, is been affected, is being contaminated by the dirty, filthy sewage money, pollution money that they're taking. So, for example, now this is where it gets interesting, okay? This is where I'm going to name and shame an organisation. So, the Rivers Trust. One more time. The Rivers Trust. Maybe you know this organisation, maybe you don't know this organisation. I can't say I know everything about this organisation, but I can tell you what I do know. I do know that, you may remember me from my doing my Troy McClure impression there. You may remember me from such tweets as you may remember me from such I did a tweet which was viral for me anyway. It had over 600 retweets, which is really good. It was just called a sewage system needs and went through the 4 points that I just went for you. Obviously a lot more concisely. And anyway, she saw this and she sent me a message. No, that's not true. I believe I sent her a message first. I was sending some people some messages. There we go. Sending some people some messages, telling them about the water thing, asking, sharing my tweets, this kind of thing. And anyway, she came back to me and, she said, oh, which organisations do you represent? And I'm like, well, there's a few non-profits I'm working with, and there are. And she's like, okay, and you're just an anonymous person on the internet. And I'm like, Waterways Protection is a registered organisation. You can Google Waterways Protection in a second and you'll find me. I mean, I'm the registered founder of Waterways. So straight away she's just basically like saying things that aren't really true. Well, not really true, that aren't true, they're just nonsensical. So anyway, but what she said to me, she goes, oh, you want to look at nature-based solutions? And I'm like, okay, such as, she's like, well, the wetlands. I'm like, okay. She goes, what you can do is you can take all that sewage and you can just put it into wetlands. And what happens is after a time, nature treats it. So I'm like, all right, okay. I said, look, right, the wetlands, okay, are not not there for us to spew our untreated toxic waste into in the hope that it will eventually be treated by nature at the cost of completely flipping destroying that entire wetlands area. I said, no, it's absolute nonsense. I can't even believe that you would say that. By the way, for the avoidance of any doubt, I am 100% pro revitalization of the wetlands. Okay. Really, I am, but I don't agree that we should just put all our untreated sewage into the wetlands. Okay, not at all. I think we can divert rainwater there sometimes, sure. So providing it's not the rainwater itself is not full of pollutants because they haven't gone through interceptors and all the rest of it. Yeah, but providing we can send clean water, right, to the wetlands, I'm like 100% for it. Of course I am. I mean, who wouldn't be, right? I mean, come on. But I'm not pro using nature. And they like to greenwash it and call it nature solutions. And she had a lovely brochure with lovely bodies of water and amphibious creatures in there looking like lovely. But it was all just to sell the idea that we should just dump the waste into wetlands, So yeah, no, like so I read her old brochure in full. The Rivers Trust brochure in full. And checked out all the links. I mean, I read it. I ate it. It was data. I ate it. Okay. And when you boiled it all down, that was the solution. Dump everything into the wetland, and nature will treat it eventually. And I basically said, well, look, I mean, that's just nonsense. I said, well, I didn't say that's just nonsense. I said, look, the environment's not there to be a dustbin for us to dump our waste into, right? First and foremost. So we can forget that idea. Regenerating the wetlands, yes, but not with filth. Okay, with clean water, right? It's not really hard. And then I said, so what needs to happen is the thing that I always say is the filthy water. Okay, it needs to be stored in sumps and storage tanks. So then the water treatment, So then the waterworks, the water treatment centre, can then treat it at a rate that they can manage, because they're always complaining that the water's coming in at a rate we can't manage. Okay, fine. Put it in the sump and then feed it back in at a rate that you can manage. Wow. Just give me a second. Anyway, this lady, Michelle Walker, who is the technical director for the Rivers Trust. Now, if this was a Twitter spat with just any old person, I wouldn't be talking to you about it, right? But this is the technical director at the Rivers Trust. So this is very much a public person at a public organisation involved in this fight. Okay, so it's fair game, right? And I don't want to wear any nonsense otherwise, yeah? So this person, this technical director of the Rivers Trust, I mentioned about the sumps, and they said to me, oh, what's a sump? And I'm like, you don't know what a sump is? And she's like, no. I'm like, okay, well, that's cool, you know. Do you mind just like Googling it? It'll only take a couple of minutes, and then we can like come back and you can finish the conversation. Not being condescending or anything like this, you know. But there's no point in me talking about what a sump is if somebody doesn't know what it is, right? Okay. So anyway, technical director went away, did a bit of research, learned what a sump was. Great, came back, and so they said, okay, well, to build sumps is not the solution, because that uses emissions and resources. So that makes me, and this is what the technical director at the Rivers Trust, Michelle Walker, told me, and I've got all of this screenshotted, even a video of me logging into my Twitter, and you know, and then videoing the entire conversation after, just so they can't deny it, basically. The technical director then called me a climate terrorist. Okay, a climate terrorist. So what they were doing is they were using the arguments that have been given to them by the water companies against me, inverting environmental arguments against the activists, which in this case was me. So, you know, I just basically said, well, look, you know, that doesn't make me, you know, a climate terrorist. It's our responsibility it's the water company's responsibility to store the dirty water, to protect it from the nature, to treat it, so then when they're putting it back into nature, like into your wetlands you want to revitalise, for example, or into rivers, it's just treated clean. And to be accused of being a climate terrorist, okay, just for suggesting that is really odd. Now, and then some other chap came along who started saying, well, because there were two conversations. There was a conversation I was having on a public tweets with this person, and then we also moved to a DM conversation, you know, as well. So on the public conversation, some other chap came along. I can't remember his name, and it's not important right now, actually. But he came along, and he was basically, you know, defending their position. Anyway, a little bit of research, you know, he'd worked at Northumbrian Water for many years, and was now a consultant who was contracting to Northumbrian Water. So again, he was just compromised, yeah. Now, and then I discovered that the Rivers Trust, okay, who Michelle Walker, the technical director for the Rivers Trust, works for, yeah, one of the main contributors to them financially is Northumbrian Water. Northumbrian Water are a prolific polluter, okay? So what I'm trying to say is a lot of organisations out there, so-called charities, for example, who are basically campaigning on behalf of the water companies in this disinformation campaign. Okay, they're doing anything, because basically, it's divide and conquer. Yeah, it's the way of the world. It's the way the British ruled the world. It's the way neoliberal globalist organisations rule us today. I don't want to go all into politics and all the rest of it, but divide and conquer. Long story short, it's proven it works, and it's got a number of different applications to different populations, different societies, or whatever. And it's a good way to break down an argument. So if there's a group of people, if there's 100 people all saying the exact same thing, yeah, then what that means is there's a lot of pressure applied, right? So it's difficult for the person you're lobbying about, or the organisation or you lobby about. It doesn't give them a lot of wiggle room. However, if you can put out lots of different types of arguments, counter arguments, information, disinformation, some of them right, some of them wrong, some of them half right. So then suddenly you've not got 100 people saying the same thing, but suddenly 10 people are saying this, 20 people are saying, well, then you create, we create this paradigm where, there's lots of different opinions, isn't there? There's lots of different arguments, it's not an easy solution. And all of a sudden, all that pressure that could have been applied by the 100 people armed with the facts and 2 or 3, 4 solid points, like my 4 points, yeah, which are, just to go on about it one more time, final effluent standard to be raised to that of at least drinking water quality, so all of the chemicals, all the pharmaceuticals are taken out. 2, SUMPs that can store many days worth of overflow, not just 40 minutes as is the case in most waterworks. 3, reservoirs to be built to maintain clean water. 4, correctly maintain pipe networks. Now if you can muddle that up, so 100 people aren't exactly saying that anymore, but they're saying many other things, well then you're basically giving the water companies, you're playing into the water companies' hands, you're playing into the government's hands, okay, by buying into all these nonsensical BS arguments, okay, so you all need to be aware of it, right? Now, I want to talk about something else. Yes, baby. Just 2 more minutes, darling. Well, maybe 5. Okay. So, I want to talk about something else. You want to come and join us for this final point? So the okay, and this is a little bit more. And this is a little bit more of a sensitive topic, but it is a topic that needs addressing nonetheless. So what we have now is and I'm not talking about compromised charities now. I'm going to keep talking about some non-profits, but not in the context of them being compromised or anything like that, but more along the lines of well-meaning organisations with that are putting out confusing messages which actually really aren't helping the problem. So I want to talk about surfers, as this is just one example, okay, there are many others, but I want to talk about surfers against sewage, all right? They have some different campaigns. One of their campaigns is by 2030 they want 200 designated bathing water status areas, okay? Okay, so let's just break this down a little bit. So, and they had another campaign which was like, you know, they wanted 40 beaches bathing water status by 2030, 200 rivers or something like this, you know? The point is when you say that, look, by 2030 we want, 200 rivers to have bathing status, or sections of river to have bathing water status, what you're actually saying is all the many thousands, tens of thousands of sections of rivers and lakes and streams, you're basically saying it's okay for the other companies to pollute at will. You're basically saying, yeah, that you're trying to put out the idea that there's some kind of trade-off to be made. A trade-off between that. A lot of this is coming from, the surfing and the wild swimming community. Now, I'm a wild swimmer myself. I'm a surfer myself. Well, surfer as in as much as I use a bodyboard. Yeah, I don't have the I'm a little bit dyspraxic, all right, so don't have the best balance, so I don't like have the best balance to, you know, be on a surfboard. But I do a lot of bodyboarding when I get the chance, you know, down in Cornwall and whatnot. Not this year, but you know, hopefully I'll, you know, get to do some before too long. Anyway, look, the point is that from the wild swimming, it seems that a lot of this campaigns for clean water, for clean waters, are coming from the surfing and the wild swimming communities. Now, I understand like why they're saying what they're saying. You know, they're living their lives. They're getting up. They're, you know, they're taking a swim, and they don't want to swim in like crap. You know, they don't want to swim in sewage, or they don't want to swim in a filthy river full of algae blooms, and that's not fresh water. Of course they don't. So they're thinking, well, look, how can we, you know, how can we change this? So they think, oh, well, let's campaign for clean rivers, or at least it's water to be bathing status, yeah? So I understand where it comes from, and I'm not knocking where it comes from, okay? And I'm not saying that these people are behaving in a disingenuous way or whatever, but what I'm saying is we do need to look at it a little bit more deeply. So let me just tell you one thing, right? And even if you do have a river or a beach, as quite often is the case, which has bathing water status, all that means, right, let's just get this off the table right now, yeah, right now. All that means is once or twice a year, usually in the summer, the water company will come along, make a test. Maybe there'll be an auditor there, maybe they won't, who knows, but they'll make a test, and they'll test the water, and then they'll publish the results of that water. And if it's at a certain level, it will have the bathing water status. But when they do the test, the water company's time when they do the test, so they'll not pollute for a few days, then they'll go and do the test, and then afterward they'll just continue to pollute anyway. So it's all nonsense. It's all absolute. So just forget about it, right? So just. But then the real thing is if anyone actually thinks for 1 second if anybody thinks for 1 second that there's some kind of that you can pollute one part of the river or one part of the sea and it not affect the whole system, okay, it's just complete and utter madness. You just need to forget this idea right now. Yeah, just get it out of your head. The only thing we need to be pushing for is zero pollution, okay? Zero pollution from any of the water treatment centres into any of the rivers, any of the seas, and any of the waterways. And if anybody thinks there's some kind of deal that can be done, okay, whereby you can just have your little bit of river nice and clean, or your little bit of a beach nice and clean, so you can just keep surfing and keep swimming away and ignore all the other problems, just forget it. It's the most selfish, ridiculous thing I've ever flipping heard, yeah? And it's got to stop. I am sick of this toxic, selfish, myopic nonsense that is going around, okay? The argument is very simply no sewage pollution anywhere. What happens up the river affects what's down the river, okay? What happens in down the stream comes further downstream, right? What happens on one beach, yeah, will affect what happens, you know, down other beaches, and then water comes in and out and then back into the waterways, you know? I mean, just forget it, right? This whole argument, these campaigns that are going around. So if you watching this truly care about the environment and not just your little swim in the morning, right? Because that's what it comes down to, yeah? Or even if you do just care about your true swim, know that the campaign has to be no pollution, okay? No sewage pollution anywhere, okay? That is it. So please please, if you're part of a campaign group where you're campaigning for bathing status and all the rest of it, you need to know that you're actually doing the job of the government and the polluters for them. Yeah, you're actually part of the disinformation, okay? Because there's only one campaign, okay? And that is no pollution into the waterways, be it from the sewage companies or the farming and agricultural companies. That's something we're going to come on another episode. So look, it's 1 hour and 14 minutes. I've said all I'm going to say for this video. I know it's a long one, but there we go. Yeah, I am really happy to have spoken to you today. I'm going to keep campaigning waterways protection. We're basically an organisation that I set up over a year ago, and I visit waterways up and down the country. I visit sewage outflow pipes. I'm trying to do things, you know, as much as I can. I'm trying to get funds together for drones, for boats, you know, for more costs, so I can do more and more work, for more lobbying. I'm trying to apply more and more pressure. You know, I'm doing absolutely everything I can. I do it full time. This is what I do full time now, because I don't think that, you know, it makes sense as just to continue going about business as normal when we've only got like a couple of years left, 2 or 3 years left before all the waterways are completely done. And guys, when we lose the blue veins of our country, okay, of this land, right, all the wildlife ecology dies off. Then you've got pestilence and disease, okay, which spread into human populations, okay. Right now they're poisoning the well, and pretty soon it's going to get to a point where all the wells, all the waterways, all the river, everything's completely polluted, completely done for, and disease is going to run rampant. New viruses are going to be here, everything. Yeah, it's really, really bad. So not only is it bad for all the living creatures and the animals who I care a lot about, okay, but it's also bad for humans as well. Yeah, and it's also bad for cancer and all kinds of things. Yeah, it's going to be really, it is really bad, and it's going to get a lot worse. I'm going to talk more about that specifically on other issues, but anyway, so I am working hard. In 1 year, I'm going to start actually going onto the street to get donations, because we're completely broke as an organisation. We don't have anything. In 1 year, we've had one donation, okay, which was this week from a chap, a very kind chap, a kind organisation who called City Voice, Local Voice, who donated £25 to us. And that was our first one and only ever donation I've ever received from our website and donation site, been up for over a year. We're trying to get together about 300 quid a month as a starting point, just to keep the wheels turning. So if any of you want to log onto my website, waterwaysprotection.com, waterwaysprotection.org, click on the donate, and if you want to make a single donation, or if you want to donate £10 a month, you know, you're more than welcome, because literally we need all the help we can get. Or if you don't have any money, you know, like myself, I can definitely relate to you, but anything you can do, like on social media, you know, if you want to share our posts, our Facebook posts, our Instagram posts, our TikToks, our YouTubes, or the Twitter's the main one where you'll see me. But of course I'm trying to, you know, leverage the other one. So please, any support you can give, like, you know, like, do so. I don't know if this will ever come up on screen, probably won't, but whatever. Yeah, anything you can do. Anyway, enough begging it now. Okay, you can click the flipping link. Right, it's been lovely to speak to you all. I'll see you later. Bye bye.